For the last 2 days, we have been hearing a lot on Maslow's nomenclature, and I think rightfully so because it is the hot topic. It is what we see most commonly both in adults and children. And my job here would be to see whether we really need a new nomenclature in children and whether applying the new nomenclature has any disadvantages and advantages. So, I mean, just to kind of go through why we need a new name at all, or why do we need a name at all. It increases disease awareness once you have an identified name. It can drive policy change. It identifies those who are at risk and facilitates diagnosis and access to care. And language is very important, and therefore so much goes into arguing about what should be the exact words used in creating or eliminating stigma. You can standardize the cohorts, and unified terminology is needed for clinical trials and research. So to start off with, is pediatric NAFLD different? Yes, it is. There are influences in early life which determine development of pediatric NAFLD, both genetic and epigenetic. The intrauterine environment, presence of gestational diabetes, the mother's microbiome plays a role. Exposures in early infancy, the birth weight, when is the salt and the sugar introduced in infancy, all these play a role. There is an opportunity in the pediatric population to reverse the course of disease much more than in adults because you can start early, but we really need long-term studies as to what happens to these children 60, 70 years hence once they have been diagnosed to have NAFLD in childhood. So if we talk about the term NASH, it came way back in 1980 by Ludwig from Mayo Clinic, who characterized it by the classic macrovascular steatosis, mixed nodular inflammation, ballooning, and Mallory's highline. Now what we see in children is there's more periportal rather than pericentral inflammation. And in children, generally there is less ballooning and less of Mallory's highline compared to adults. NAFLD term was used to cover the entire spectrum which we are familiar with. So is it an appropriate term in children? Now when you use the word non-alcoholic, most children, in adults it's understandable that you have to differentiate it from the alcoholic. But for most children below 14, they are not alcoholic, and it's much more stigmatizing in children than in adults. It does not tell you, it tells you it's not alcohol, but what exactly the pathophysiology is not defined. The steatohepatitis in pediatric NAFLD is different from those in adults. When you say metabolic in pediatric population, it refers to IEMs, the inborn errors of metabolism, versus the metabolic of metabolic dysfunction, which is referring to the metabolic syndrome and cardiometabolic risk factors. Also, stigmatization of the word fatty probably may be much more in children. It may impair willingness to undergo lifestyle modifications. After the word NAFLD was applied to the pediatric population, there was a move to call it pediatric fatty liver disease, or PEFLD. Now this was by the King's group, Dr. Dhawan et al., and they divided into 3 groups: type 1, which is monogenic; type 2 is the classic NAFLD, or later what was called MAFLD, metabolic dysfunction associated fatty liver disease; and type 3, in which one thought of a monogenic disorder but could not really identify it at that point of time. And they looked at their data from King's College of 441 patients, and what you can see is that though the majority are the classic NAFLD, or what they called MAFLD at that time, a large number were also monogenic liver disorders, and therefore this group is different, is more in children, and therefore there is a need to have a separate classification in children. And type 3 was all else, which was a small number. Now what about MAFLD? Now MAFLD came in 2020. In as I said, 1980 we talked of NAFLD. 2020 it was thought that the word NAFLD should be removed for the reasons I mentioned, and you should have the term MAFLD. What were the pros and cons? Pros was it understood, it told you about the underlying pathophysiology, and there was a positive criteria to give a diagnosis of metabolic syndrome. Cons were that again it included the word fatty, though the word alcohol had been removed, though it was still there actually. And It did not specify any other alternative diagnosis, and it did not address the possibility of there could be an overlying or overlapping condition as well, and that's what we see today. So finally, in 2023, this is what we talk about, have been talking about throughout our meeting last 2 days. This was this multi-society Delphi consensus on nomenclature for fatty liver disease. And that is where the term MASLD was introduced, which is metabolic dysfunction associated steatotic liver disease. So there, all encompassing term was steatotic liver disease, and then it was divided further. So if we were to just go through the history of nomenclature, whether it's adults or children, it's way back in the 1800s when it was attributed by Thomas Addison that when you have an alcohol consumption, which is in excess, you get fatty degeneration in the liver. So alcohol was identified as a cause of fatty liver way back in the 1800s. In the 1970s, hepatologists realized that it was not only alcohol, but even obese individuals developed a fatty liver, and then Ludwig classified it as NASH in 1980. And it was in 2018 that the King's Group suggested the term pediatric fatty liver disease. In 2020, it was suggested that NAFLD be replaced by MAFLD, that is metabolic dysfunction associated fatty liver disease. And in 2023 is when the Delphi consensus of the 3 adult societies decided, though there were pediatric hepatologists on this group, that it should be called MASLD under the broad term steatotic liver disease. So coming to the pediatric population, is it simple NAFLD or is there an alternative etiology? So we know the criteria for simple NAFLD. I'll not really read through this. Of course, look for acanthosis nigricans, very obvious, but I think it's a good thing to, it will immediately tell you that there is a metabolic syndrome in that child. Alternative etiology, especially if the child is less than 5 years, there are no obvious cardiometabolic risk factors, and the child has presented with different phenotypes, and this could be a wide variety of phenotypes. It could be an acute liver failure presenting with a child whose liver looks fatty, or a neonatal cholestasis picture, or just an organomegaly where you have a fatty liver, as you'd see in glycogen storage disorders, or patient has come with developmental abnormalities, or it may be a totally asymptomatic child. Now it's beyond this time that I can discuss all this in detail, but just to keep in mind that it's not necessary, as in adults you see or you pick up a fatty liver only when the patient comes with some discomfort in the right upper quadrant or is asymptomatic and is picked up on routine tests. In children, it could be a whole variety of phenotypic presentations of a so-called steatotic liver disease. Now this is a nice diagram. This article from Journal Hepatology is very informative, and I would encourage you to go through this. So this is a picture of a hepatocyte with a mitochondria in it. Basically, in fatty liver, there is increased delivery of fatty acids, which could be either acquired or inherited, and there is impaired efflux or utilization of these fatty acids. And these fatty acids go into the hepatocyte through the carnitine transporter, undergo beta oxidation, and various other get into various metabolic enzyme pathways. They're used up by the respiratory chain or the Krebs cycle. Also, there's a role of the endoplasmic reticulum and the lysosome. So all these play a role in creating fat in the liver, which is identified on various imaging modalities. This diagram actually describes the pathologies in each of these pathways. I'm not going to read through it, don't worry, but just to again emphasize that all fat is not NASH. So there could be dysfunction at the endoplasmic reticulum, and this is a list of diseases under this pathophysiology. Similarly, again, it could be defects in any of these pathways, and each of these pathways would have a specific disease related to it, just to again emphasize that so many causes of fat in the liver in the pediatric population. And is it necessary really to differentiate these monogenic disorders? Yes, it is important, because a whole list of disorders are treatable, and therefore it is important. And if you were listening to Dr. Sanyal in the previous session, in the EASL studio session, he said that maybe even in adults we are missing a lot of monogenic disorders, which are actually there, but we don't really think of them. So I think here the pediatricians have led the way in telling us that, look, this could be something else, look for it, and I think it should be extrapolated to adults as well. So what did the pediatric societies do after the Delphi consensus? They came up with their own multi-society statement which endorsed the new nomenclature which was put forth by the Delphi consensus, and almost all pediatric societies are included in this, and this has been published in the JPGN this year, Jan this year. So I'll go through this algorithm which they quoted. So a pediatric steatotic liver disease has been identified. Look for red flags. Now what are the red flags? There could be many more than what have been listed. A child who is less than 8 years, because typical MASLD is in older children. There's a developmental delay, or there's a family history, or there's synthetic liver dysfunction. The BMIs are different. They are low BMIs, splenomegaly, and there is a history which gives you suspicion of some other etiology. So if there is a red flag, go ahead, investigate in that direction. If there is no red flag, look for the cardiometabolic criteria, and I'll be talking about this in the next slide. So if there are cardiometabolic criteria, you still don't stop there and call it MASLD. You again ask the question, is there any other etiology which is likely? And again, I'll talk about this other etiology. Yes, then it is a MASLD with overlap of that etiology, like hep C or thyroid or celiac disease. There are a whole lot of them. If there is no other etiology and it meets cardiometabolic criteria, then this is the MASLD which we are talking about. On the other hand, if there are no cardiometabolic criteria, again you look for the etiology, the first line of investigation, the other etiology. If yes, it is that. If no, so there's no cardiometabolic criteria, there's no other etiology identified, it is then you call it cryptogenic. So you have 4 groups: the classic MASLD, MASLD with overlap of some other etiology, which could be a monogenic gene disorder, or it could be something else. Any other single etiology, again could be either, and cryptogenic where you don't find anything. So where does MET ALD fit in here at all, which we have been talking about again and again in the adults? It would probably come in the MASLD overlap group, though it's not common in children, as we said. So what are these first line investigations they suggest? Autoimmune liver disease, Wilson's, alpha-1 antitrypsin, we do not see in India, but it has been suggested, thyroid function test, celiac, hepatitis B and C, and very important, drug-induced, especially CAM, one should look for, and alcohol. Extended spectrum would basically mean doing genetic tests to rule out monogenic disorders. And this is the whole list of cardiometabolic risk factors. The pediatric criteria were laid down by the Delphi consensus. Now, how is it different from the adults? Basically, it's based on percentiles, unlike adults where we don't talk of percentiles. So again, I'm not going to read through this, but worth noting that you need one cardiometabolic risk factor to say it is MASLD, along with the presence of fatty liver. Now, just to tell you how confusing it can get, this is a list of various definitions which have been used to define metabolic syndrome in young children. So most of them are based on percentiles, but the values do differ from one to the other. So just to say that this is a gray area in pediatrics where you are not clearly defining the metabolic syndrome. They have used their own definitions, but there are various people who have defined it differently. So we recently had the ISPAGAN consensus meeting on fatty or steatotic liver disease in children in Mumbai, and there was a general agreement. They endorsed that MASLD is the term to be used instead of NAFLD now, as has all the other societies mentioned. So if we were to kind of conclude, we would say MASLD in children would be steatosis plus at least one cardiometabolic criteria and no other disease found. And the diagnostic pathway in children would be different. You have a pediatric steatotic liver disease, it is MASLD, MASLD with overlap, any other single entity, or cryptogenic, and they have put alcoholic liver disease in the, you can see the box is much smaller. look for red flags. Now, this is important. Even if you have an obvious metabolic syndrome, look for red flags because there can always be an overlap, and then one needs to do more extensive investigations. And finally, is this the last word? I would say no, it's not yet perfect. It depends on cardiometabolic factors. So that is most important. And we are taking just one cardiometabolic factor to say that this is MASLD. As I showed you in that slide, there are several definitions of what this cardiometabolic criteria should be. You need only one, so there are other etiologies can be missed. It depends on where the patient is going. Patient is going to a pediatric generalist, he may think of it as a MASLD. Patient is going to a metabolic liver disease specialist, as we understand metabolic inherited disorders. He may not think of MASLD at all. So there can be a problem here. There's a high prevalence of obesity and overweight children now. They say 30-35% of the population has this problem. So it may mask an underlying inborn error of metabolism. So you have an obese child coming to you with a fatty liver. He could very well be having Wilson disease, but you will probably call it MASLD. So have that high index of suspicion in children. And beware before labeling a child who is thin as lean NAFLD, even in the presence of cardiometabolic. So if he may have one cardiometabolic risk factor, and you will call it lean NAFLD, extrapolating it from the adult population, but there may be an inherent or an inborn error of metabolism. Thank you. Yeah, that's their thing, but yeah, we
should advise pediatricians or anyone who's taking care of the child to look at those simple investigations, like even if you have a fatty, elevated transfer, just see that.
I would say because they have started off with just fatty liver on AJ, not high ALT. I guess if you have a person with high ALT, then you will find out
just show that. I know this is standard. Shall we finish this or take the DL?
Yeah, sure.
Here,
Yeah.
Whatever it is, yes or no, finally they want us to do the first line investigation. So why don't we think whether there are red flag signs, yes or no, whether it's yes or no. Both the groups are getting the first line investigation. So I think the first line investigation, whenever a child has pediatric steatosis, simple test should be done. What do the others need? At least the
But
should be worked up, celluloplasmin should be done.
no, but Dr. Malti, if you have a patient who just has a fatty liver, enzymes are not high, are you going to do tests for Wilson's and autoimmune? I don't think so.
I think I would endorse what Malati is saying because you just can't afford to miss treatable metabolic causes. At least MASLD, there's nothing great to treat. So I would totally believe that what the basic teaching to us was that whenever you find steatosis, do rule out Hep C, which we don't see now, and other metabolic disorders. So I see a point in what you say, especially if not anything, the ceruloplasmin, because that could be asymptomatic. However, she's also wanting that if the enzymes are not high, then I would agree with her for autoimmune, we did not do.
But how many Wilsons have we seen? I mean, I see a fair number of Wilsons where you have just a fatty liver and enzymes are bang normal.
Yeah, because that is what, because
unusual.
What we are seeing only when they come to us by that time. No, we are talking about a pediatrician.
Yeah,
so pediatrician
age group
may not see the way you're saying because there are times. So I think that point is valid in what she said.
These are the first line. This is the first line. And this is not mine. This is JPGN. That's what I've said, but there's difference of opinion. So I think it's Dr. Yacha, you can give your comments.
We have not yet the compartments are very tight, there are overlaps, so an individual patient should be actually assessed and accordingly investigated. That is what I would say. This is an algorithm they have given. That is fine. You are also right in a way that what they have given, but we have to individualize the patient.
Yeah, I think if you have a fatty liver in a child whose sib has died of liver disease, I would definitely. So I think many other factors would be important. Only thing is that if we were to investigate all kids with fatty liver for everything, then it may we may land up doing too much of investigation. Yeah, that's my view.
Can I make a comment? Now, these guidelines are made for the mass, for the whole pediatric community or pediatric gastroenterologists. If we believe your statement that 30% of children are obese, you apply this guideline to this 30%, how much investigation unnecessary you will do.
Yeah.
So this is
Exactly.
not correct. We should not investigate first and then think whether it is fatty liver disease or not. You need to apply those red flags and find out if this child is classical of MSMD or not.
Yeah.
Then definitely investigate. But Neelam, I don't agree the child is coming who is obese, who is having cardiometabolic factor positive and LFT normal, he will look for Wilson disease. That is not correct. This message should not go to the pediatrician. As an individual you can do, I can do, because we are selective.
She's not
But-
saying obese. They are saying steatotic. That is a different now angle you twisted. If
not
it is an
twisted anything,
obese and
Neelam.
steatotic agreed.
Steatotic with cardiometabolic
No, no.
factor.
That agreed. What Malati is saying is not that. She's saying steatotic with that. She did not say obese or cardiac. She said steatotic. That's what I said.
Yes.
I'm glad I
So
clarified.
that itself becomes a
Yeah.
risk
So I'm
factor.
not saying
You are not.
cardio. I agree with
Yeah.
him totally.
I think we
Ujjal,
should-
what he's saying, I agree if
Let's
it is
go to the
obese.
next topic. Thank you so much.
So the bottom line is there's no last word yet.
We're stimulating this